On the count of five, four, three, two, one. Hello and welcome to yet another episode with productlessons.com. I'm Ravi, your host, and pretty excited for our guest today. But before that, if you are new here, and you would also know, you must know that there is an audio channel as well on SoundCloud, and the SoundCloud is in the description below. So, yeah, on this podcast, we talk to product leaders from all over the world and learn from them how they build and manage world class software products. So, we have some interesting lineup of speakers for the end of the year as well. And today, I'm thrilled to have with me Abhilash Verma. Abhilash is the Vice President of Product Management for Citrix. In fact, we used to have a Citrix office, and now it's Logmein, right where I live in the city here in Karlsruhe. So Abhilash has had a phenomenal career trajectory. He has risen through the ranks over the years within the organization. He has built products to achieve customer satisfaction while growing businesses exponentially. He has grown highly motivated product teams and champions from ground up for successful product delivery. He has a broad experience across product management, product marketing, technical marketing, competitive intelligence, and product engineering organizations. So, with that, let's welcome Abhilash. Let's get him on screen. Hi, Abhilash. Welcome to productlessons.com. How are you doing today?
Hello, Ravi. Thank you very much for hosting me. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great as well. Pretty excited and pumped to talk to you. I know you have a busy schedule, but thanks for taking time out. And yeah, I'm pretty thrilled. So let's begin by setting the context here, Abhilash. Why don't you? Of course, I gave a brief intro of yours, but we would like to know a little deeply about how has your career transformed, and you have had an impressive career rise. So maybe if you can give us a brief account of your past career, that will be a great start for us.
Sure, Ravi, and welcome to all the listeners and viewer on the podcast. First of all, when you reached out, I started to actually explore your product lessons and figured out that you've got some really interesting podcasts out there. So congratulations! It is things like this over a period of time really become the knowledge center for a lot of people to look up to. So I'm glad that you're doing it. So thank you for doing that. About my career, right? So after my graduation, I started with I used to love programming and, sit down for days and code. So my first job was into a network security product line. And we were in those days, right? In late 90s, we were kind of trying to combine an IDS, IPS, and a firewall into a single open source solution. It was pretty exciting, and I worked there, and then I kind of realized that I wanted to go for my master's. I went for my master's, and after the master's, I started to work as information security consultant in Mahindra's in Bombay, and spent some good time, really good learning. Worked under great leaders like Captain Raghuraman. And then I wanted to get some experience in startup, and that's where my journey with NetScaler started, which was acquired by Citrix later in 2005, and hence my journey with Citrix just continued. So in the NetScaler Citrix time frame, I worked on different roles, starting with a security engineer on the product. Then the core engineer on ADC engine, and then slowly, because of my experience of consulting and on security, I always was looking up to the possibilities of me contributing on the customer end. So like back in 2006-7, I started to get engaged on POCs. I started to get engaged on customer journeys, and slowly built my career from there into the product management line, because product management was very, very new concept in India back in early 2000s. So it was very new concept. So slowly built up into the product management line, started the function, and kind of when I started with just the UI. I used to be the product manager for the UI of ADC product line. And yeah, it took some good time, and slowly over the years learned, transformed, and was very lucky to hire some really good product managers out here, and people from campus as well as the hires from the industry, and we built this whole product line. So today I run the Citrix ADC hybrid multi-cloud business for Citrix, and taking care of the product and business priorities.
Got it. And what are your so as a VP? What are your roles and responsibilities? How does a regular month or a week look like for you?
Yeah, well, product management is, as you know, right? Product management is not a space where you can plan a lot of things. It's and that's the value of it. Right? The role is pretty dynamic. My core deliverables, or what I'm responsible for, is business. The revenue of the product line, adoption of our products, new solutions, cloud, the SaaS services, and then building a really strong team. Making sure that we are hiring really strong talent. These are the things on a common basis I'm responsible for. But then beyond, in my current role, I'm also responsible to lay out the complete vision for the product and the company, in which direction we want to go for hybrid multi-cloud application delivery, and convert the vision into strategy for short term, long term, work with my PM teams across India and US to translate the strategy into roadmap, and focus on execution. So yeah, long answer, but yeah, multiple things based on priorities. We switch gears and take care of what's needed.
Got it. And you have done a fantastic job. That's why you have risen through the ranks very fast in your organization. So, what would you attribute your success to? What do you think are the strengths for a product leader that one should have?
Well, product, number one, I think I attribute my success or growth to a solid team, right? End of the day, I mean, if you want to be a leader, you really need to build a solid team, and it's the team who kind of pushes you up. The team grows, they push you up, and that's how my growth has come across. And also, it is about being very, very focused, right? I mean, very focused, very result oriented, which is what you expect product managers to do, as we will discuss more about it. And then simple things like never give up, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, right? You want to do the right things. You fail. I mean, I think one of the most important things we do in our team is to be every week, if not possible in a week, like at least in a month, we ask everybody to celebrate one of their failures. So we want to make sure that people are open to talk about it, and more importantly, when they're open to talk about it, they do the self reflection on it, and understand what did they miss. So we celebrate failures, right? And as much as we celebrate success, and we all take notes from both of them and improve as a team. So leadership is super important to be a product manager, because product manager is expected to operate cross-functional, across the ranks and across the hierarchies and across the teams, without having direct authority over the team, right? So one of the old sayings that, okay, product manager is the CEO of the product, right? And I always tell people that, well, as much as I would want to say that, I would like everyone to stay with the reality that we are responsible for products without being the CEO, because in most cases you don't have a large team reporting into the product managers, right? I mean, as you grow through the ranks, obviously you grow the team and the responsibility, but for product managers to be successful, they cannot work with authority. They have to work with influence. And these are some of the core traits which leads you to success and growth.
Got it. So while we were thinking of a theme for our conversation today, you and I, you said I mean, we came to a conclusion that let's talk about the framework for product management that has worked for you, and I got very excited about that. So let's dig into that. So what has been your framework for product management, and how has it evolved over the years, and what is it that you put into practice daily in your workplace?
Sure, absolutely, Ravi. Happy to answer that. And so when I started my journey towards product management, early 2006, seven, um, there wasn't a lot of content. First, there weren't courses available. Very few people, like within the context of where I live in India. Very few people were aware of product management as a profile. So I did a lot of, I must say, like I did a lot of trial and error, right? I did a lot of trial and error in a way, and I decided to figure it out, that what works, what doesn't work. So I have a very fixed framework which I work with, and I always talk to my PMs to follow the framework, and keep evolving it, keep adding new things what we want to do. As part of the framework, I'll kind of talk about a few things which
Right.
possibly everybody can relate to, right?
Right.
So there are four key principles. There are kind of four key principles I work with as part of the framework, and these are all very basic, right? You start with the most fundamental questions like why, what, how, and focus on the results, right? So, for example, let's talk about the first one.
Mhm.
Why do managers need to start with why? Because if you look back on the journey of a product manager, right? I mean, if you look back earlier, most of the jobs were like project managers, delivery managers, because there was someone else defining the why for you, right? I mean, if you engage in a project, it, if you kind of talk to the delivery managers, right? I mean, somebody else will define the problem statement. Somebody else will tell them what needs to be done, right?
Right.
And their job was to focus on how.
Right.
And when product management came up, right, it was about innovation. It was about bringing the change, and you can only bring the change when you are able to define the problem statement very clearly, right? So
Correct.
as part of product management, what we started to do was number one, you always start with why. You define the problem, right? What are you trying to solve, right?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to solve that? Why do you do what you do, right?
Right.
That's how I asked the question. And why gives you clarity on the use case, which is a must to build the right product, right? I very strongly recommend the book called Start with Why. I'm sure possibly you have read it.
Right.
And if you've not, I would highly recommend the book to for everyone, all the product managers to read. It's written by Simon Sinek, and maybe it was just I was lucky, right? I remember Simon talked about the concept of why in 2009, and that's where my journey was. Like I was taking the baby steps,
Right.
and I just kind of latched up to that concept. I said, this exactly makes sense for product management as a job. So, you start to focus on things like, why is this problem, right? Why are you trying to solve something which is a problem, and why do you need to solve it?
Right.
Why does a customer need this solution or product, right?
Right.
Why existing products don't address this use case, or they can't solve this problem?
Right.
Then you start to question, does this why align with your strategy? Does this why align with your vision of where you want to go, right?
Right.
And you figure out that digging down why almost always takes you to kind of unstated needs and problems which are not defined clearly when
Right.
you start to work on it, right?
Right.
And many times asking the right question will take you to bigger and better goals.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is the first part. Once you have clarity on why, the next critical thing is to work on what, which is where the product managers start to define the product, right?
So I
uh,
would like to interrupt here a bit. So you
yes.
explained the why, but how do you bring that to practice? So are the product managers writing why statements somewhere, documenting it, and somebody evaluates it, or how does it happen actually?
So why is super critical, right? I mean, no PRD starts without why. I mean,
Got it.
we tell product managers to first make sure you write the problem statement and why are you doing what you're doing.
Got it.
And unless you have a clear why defined,
Right.
you never get to what.
Got it.
Unless you have a clear why defined, you never get to what you're trying to do.
Right.
So.
And so you
Mhm.
actually enforce the product managers to have a clear why statements in a PRD, and it gets evaluated before it can be approved to what, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And if the why is not clear, I wouldn't even go to what. If the why is not clear, I will not make progress. With the reviews, and it cannot get to the next step.
Got it. Got it. Cool. So moving on to what then?
Well, so once you have clarity on why, the next critical thing is always to define the product, right? So that builds your product strategy. The what builds your strategy and roadmap, and what actually gets defined based on several key questions, right? So things like what kind of product will solve the problem, what is the user persona, you do the feasibility and viability study of the product. Does the product fit the market? Can the market be broader? What is the MVP for launching this product? Because nowadays, right, with everything going to SaaS, the launches are not like the big bang GAs. It's all about the MVP. So you define the what of the MVP. What kind of UX and design will best apply to the user journey?
Right.
Then you start to answer other questions, which are like, what is the release plan, delivery schedule, what kind of monitoring criteria you will build for the product to track the success matrix, right?
Right.
And usually I ask the last question that, hey, what's your plan for the unknowns? What's your plan for things which you don't know, right? So you start to write that, and then the final one, what not to build or
Right.
what not to do, right? So there are these series of what questions which we address as part of defining the product, and it becomes very important to kind of clarify the thought process and build and put it into a structure which can be easily followed.
No, I like that you're actually writing it down on what not to do as well. And why is it so important for you to write down what not to do as well?
It brings focus, right? Many times what happens in the product management journey is that every idea is cool. You really want to get to build, you want to get to building the most coolest ideas and innovative things,
Right.
but solving a business problem,
Right.
solving a use case versus building something cool are two very different things.
Got it.
So you need to be very, very razor focused in what your goal is.
Right.
If you're in a startup where you're actually experimenting with a new product, yeah, all new ideas may look cool and may get user attention. But if you're an established company, you got to focus on solving the customer use case, the pain point. So
Right.
what not to do are not things which are not related. What not to do are the things which we know, but we decide not to do them because they will take away the focus from solving the core problem.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, after what is essentially the how part, right?
Right.
And this is where it gets, Ravi, it gets really interesting for product managers, right? Because, like take your example or pick up anybody, right?
Right.
It like most product managers grow through the ranks of their engineering and coding or testing or various kind of their core domain experience, as
Right.
you call it, right?
Mhm.
So what happens is when you get to how, the product, the engineer within product managers awake, it wakes up, right? And then you start to figure out, hey, how can we do it? Like, you start to fill in the engineering shoes and start to do things, which I always question is because when you get to how, like,
Right.
as a product manager, your core job is to define, is to figure out the why,
Right.
define the what,
Right.
and if you have a solid team in place, you
Right.
should let engineering, you should let your architects,
Right.
UX designers work on
Right.
how should the workflow be,
Right.
how are you going to innovate to solve this problem, right? And you as a product manager play the consultant job, right? You got to play the consulting job, that okay, yes, yeah, well, sounds good, okay, maybe here is a new way you could look at solving the problem, but
Right.
you never get into the shoes of defining the how. Otherwise what happens is, this is where innovation suffers, right? Once
Mm.
product managers start to define the how, while you have good architects and engineering resources, your innovation can get hurt, and you, as a product manager, will be diverted away from the core problem, right?
Got it.
Which
Mhm.
is to build the product, and so PMs should be involved in the how phase
Right.
uh, with engineering, but in a consulting role, not into a defining role, right?
Got
But
it.
there are other things where kind of PM needs to get involved, right, in the how. Like, for example, how would you sell it? How would you do go to market, right? How would you build ecosystem? So there
Right.
are lots of other hows which we worry about or which we figure out, but apart from like building the product how, right? So
Right.
that's how the third dimension of it is. It's very important to know what to do, and as we talked about, right, what not to do,
Right.
to be able to use the complete team in a really meaningful way,
Got it.
right? So we talked about why, what, and how,
Yeah.
and the fourth thing, which is which I believe is like, is the holy grail, right? That's the most important thing. Even if you don't do the, like, well, you got to do all four, but the fourth is super important for PMs, which is where I focus on measuring results, right?
Measurable results. Okay.
Uh, so, as products get delivered, PMs must measure the outcome based on the set objectives, right? I mean, you must start a project or a product with set objectives. You should define your objectives first
Right.
and then measure the results.
Right.
Uh, it is so important to measure results, because without results, you are like, you can always call yourself successful subjectively,
Right.
but results give you the objectivity. Many
Right.
times, actually, you figure out that you build the product
Right.
without the ability to measure results,
Mm.
right?
Right. Right.
And results should always be binary. I tell my team that, I know you spend a lot of time, great efforts, and I value the efforts,
Right.
but the result is either on or off.
Right.
Great efforts cannot be result, right? so
Right.
so that's the distinction we maintain. And what we do at Citrix is we use the OKR model, right?
Right.
Which is a combination of writing down your objectives and
Right.
how would you measure the objectives using key results. And
Right.
again, I recommend this book by John Doerr called Measure What
What
Matters,
matters?
right?
Mhm.
Yes, this book changed my way of thinking about measuring results,
Right.
and it has been wonderful learning for me. And that's how this has become like core of my principles. So, right, so I would also want to share like what do we measure, right? There are a lot of things you can measure, but what's really what I have learned over the years, what's really important. Number one, like, for in my position, it's like revenue, right? The
Right.
business revenue goals, super important. Adoption, super important. Engagement, right? How well your product is engaging with the end users, customers. Your NPS scores, right? Then you get a little more on the financial side with profit margins. Are you improving the margins or the margins going down?
Right.
Your schedule of the whole product and project. And
Right.
in the end, I always say that if a PRD doesn't have a write up or or definition of what to measure and how to measure,
Right.
then I say that doesn't matter how great product you build, you
Right.
can't be successful unless you can measure it, right?
Got it. Mhm.
So these are the four things, Ravi. Start with why, define the product using what, answer
Right.
all the important questions in what, and then get to how.
Right.
Play the right role when you're in the how phase, and
Right.
and fourth, absolutely measure your results, right? Measure your success, measure the result. And like around these four principles, we are, I've been able to build my framework, and we all use this framework here to define products, build products, and be successful.
Thank you. This was wonderful, and also seeing that you apply this in Citrix just gives a lot of validation, because you can read a lot of theory about it, but you actually apply it and you have seen build successful products, gives it a lot of validation. How do you ensure that there is alignment? Say, how does, so you talked about vision and then strategy, and then do you have PMs writing their PRTs with all these four questions, and then proposing their plans to a product board, where a product board is reviewing and say approving? Or how does it work? How does the sync up work and the approval process work?
Yeah. So what we do, like, any product launch, for example, has to go through what we call internally, an alignment process, just to use a simple name, right? An alignment process. As part of the alignment process, you have got all the key stakeholders, right? For example, VP of product, VP of sales, marketing, engineering, operations, customer support, customer success. So you've got, a review board for these alignments. And before we put forward any product, obviously you write down the PRD, the detailed PRD, where you address all of these four things. And based on this framework and the PRD, you work on a business alignment proposal, which goes through review across the organization with the leadership team coming from different roles and responsibilities, and everybody needs to sign on it, right? Basically the sign off process is that, PMs present, PM own, product managers own it, but then every stakeholder has to sign off, right? And most importantly, everybody has to sign off on how are you going to measure the results, and what results, like what is your objective, right? Like, for example, okay, I will launch something in Q1 of next year. Okay, so by end of Q4, I am looking up to X million of revenues and N number of active customers, for example, right? I mean, so it's very, very simple. And then when we build these goals, we look at like immediate short term, which could be like a couple quarters to a year, then 3 years, and then we do the long range planning for 3 to 5 years. So all of this is part of launching a product and going through this cross-functional organization reviews.
So it is not in front of say face-to-face proposal reviewing. Is it sent through emails for review?
No, it is face-to-face. So
okay.
Yeah, you present, every product manager presents it face-to-face to the team, and then after the presentation, the write-up, the doc and the presentation is circulated, and then everybody has to sign off, right? I mean, we don't pressurize people to sign off right after the presentation, because they have to internalize and go through it and then question, and then a lot of time we get questions raised by different stakeholders, so we go answer those questions, and then it gets signed off using the online tools.
Got it. And usually, when is this presentation made? Is it for the features built in the next quarter or 2 quarters ahead of planning? How does it happen? At what stage?
So yeah. So most of the time, this alignment is done for new products, so new launches or launches which are changing something fundamental. For example, if you're changing pricing, if you're changing market positioning, if you're changing the go-to-market motion, if you're re-architecting something in the product in a big way. So for major changes, you do these alignments. The usual roadmap is, the usual product roadmap, quarter-on-quarter roadmap is more like a three-way conversation, right? Actually, 4 parties. So PM drives it, engineering has to do the how, then PM would work with sales and marketing to make sure, like, we are aligned on the customer journey, marketing expectation, go-to-market motion with the new feature launches.
Got it. So usually what happens is, when you have such a mode where you need business alignment proposals, you have to make a decision whether this is a big enough project or whether it is a feature, isn't it? So that becomes, I have struggled where if for every feature you need to get approval from cross-function department heads, then it just blocks the entire flow. Okay, that becomes a
Yes.
bottleneck. So how do you decide whether or not it is business relevant, it is a big feature or a big project? Or how do you decide that?
Yes, very very good question, Ravi. And we do see that. I have seen through my career. I see PMs struggling with it. It is very important to strike the right balance. And what is the right balance? The right balance has to come from why, right? Why and what are you trying to do? So if the why is big enough, large enough that it impacts the majority of user base, let's say for an existing product, or it impacts the selling motion, or it
Right.
impacts the underlying pricing strategy, kind
Right.
of, I'm just taking some examples. So you go for that alignment and review because you want the cross-functional team to be on board
Okay.
before you get into these major changes.
Got it.
But if you're making incremental delivery of the features, right, and
Right.
you're adding like, okay, hey, here is a new UI screen, or here is a new workflow, right?
Right.
Here is a new metric to the product on the dashboard. You really don't need to take these through the business alignment review process, right? Because that becomes an overkill. So
Got it.
based on the impact and the parties involved, we
Right.
decide whether something has to go through the alignment, or it's good to do incremental changes.
Got it. Excellent. So it's the call of the product manager to decide whether or not to share it with to have a business alignment meeting.
Yeah, to have the process versus go, like, okay, even when you don't have the process of business alignment, you
Right.
still review with sales and marketing and make sure that the you take care of the relevant parties, and like, which is like quarterly progress, right? I mean,
Got it.
which you do quarter over quarter.
Got it. Excellent. So let's talk about your role on the vision side and the strategy side. How do you come up with a vision, especially as a VP on the executive side? How do you come up with a vision? How long is the vision? Is it a 3-year vision? It is a 5-year vision? The more people I talk to, they say that in current scenario where the pace of change is so much, 5-year vision is nobody can imagine a 5-year vision. So mostly it usually is 1 to 3 years vision. So what is your time frame, and how do you come up with a vision? Maybe your process of coming up with a vision would be great.
Sure. And you're right. And I'm sure you're talking to all other leaders, and they're telling you the right thing, that 5-year vision is is very very difficult to define and stick to, because the changes are so dynamic and so fast, right?
Right.
So your vision today, for us, there are two things, right? Number one, you got to have very clear set objectives for the product, where you want to take the product, right? So the way we define the vision. So for example, I have a ongoing, like, running product right now, right? And see, the vision definition will be very different for a product which has an established market and
Right.
user base,
Right.
versus a product which you are coming up from scratch, right? So for established market and user base, the vision is going to be all around, number one, it's going to be like, we look at it as a year down the line and a 3 year
Right.
down the line, right?
Okay.
Sometime in the LRP exercise, we go all the way to 5 years, but the vision is a year to 3 year. And there are various things you use in the vision. For example, you look at what analysts are saying about your about the kind of market you are,
Right.
what are the futuristic uh, big changes which your market is going to experience, right? I mean, the products moving to cloud, becoming SaaS, the user base shifting, and then you start to look at, so it's a combination of your analyst data,
Right.
your customer interviews and customer research data,
Right.
a little bit on the compete side. You look at where the compete is going. Actually,
Right.
in 3 years, your competitors pretty much change, right? I mean, you start to compete on a very very different
Right.
level based on what your vision is.
Right.
So vision cannot today, it cannot be defined just based on where your product is headed. It has to have all of these combinations come together to define where you would be a year down the line to 3 years down the line. And
Right.
again, right, vision is not static, it's not fixed.
Right.
It has to be dynamic, it has to be evolving vision, which
Right.
changes by the rate of what's changing in the market. For example, COVID, right?
Mm.
With COVID, so many product visions and strategies have changed,
Right.
and it is the right thing to do based on the socioeconomic factors of the market, that you
Right.
evolve your vision to fit in the current requirements,
Right.
and how you would evolve in the future.
Got it. And so you talked about multiple sources that influence your vision, from analyst to customer interviews to competition and stuff like that. So how does it all feed into you? So is it like the VP of product management gets to decide whether or not to apply these influences and come up with a vision, or it is again a collaborative exercise with the rest of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, it is a team effort, right? I mean, vision cannot be defined in isolation. As a product management leader, right? I would say I talk less to customers as much as my individual product managers do, right? Because they are in this product journey for their specific product where they're talking more often. So when we look at the vision, we definitely take broader inputs from product managers, from other stakeholders, sales, customer success, support, and we look at what are the problems customers are having today, what will they have tomorrow. Again, the why thing, right? You go back to the why and you start thinking about what will the why a year down the line. What will be the pressing issue 3 years down the line, right? How things are going to transform. So it's a combination of transformative thinking and feedback from the entire ecosystem, right? It's
Right.
vision is never developed in isolation.
Right. And also there could be multiple, the visions could also be internally driven instead of reacting to the markets, right? So the vision could also come from the CEO saying that, you know what, in the next 2 years, we are going to go to these geographies, or we are going to get these kind of customers, or we are going to get new markets, or it could be chasing revenue. So it could
Yeah.
also be these leading indicators that not the yet, but these actually play a role in how you shape your roadmap. Am I right in that aspect as well?
Yeah. See the most of the visions, right? For example, let's say I'm a data center player, right?
Right.
And I've been thinking, for example, that hey, how's the data center journey going to evolve? Right? It's going to go to cloud. What next to cloud?
Right.
Would edge make sense?
Right.
Now, vision is a lot of deep thinking, transformative thinking,
Right.
and you take that thinking, as you said, right? I would have that thinking, somebody in my team would have it, my CEO may have it, and then you
Right.
take that thinking and cross connect the dots with what analyst is saying,
Right.
where market is headed, what
Right.
competition is doing. So you've got to connect the dots so that you're not developing it in isolation, but a lot of time the vision comes from your deep thinking and transformative thinking.
Got it. Excellent. And so, what is so for a VP? You said you are result oriented. Of course, your results, your team's results, is your results as well, isn't it? But how do you measure? So, as a VP, when you wake up in the morning or you go back to sleep, at the end of the day, how do you measure if you have been a good VP of product management? What are your success criteria for yourself?
Okay, interesting question. So, uh, you know, uh, so if you say that you ask that, end of the day, how do I measure myself, right? The number one thing, end of the day, I measure myself is my team happy,
Mm.
right? Did I do everything today to help them? Because as a VP of product management, you can relate our roles to be the general sitting and strategizing for war,
Right.
but you've got the infantry who's fighting the war.
Right.
So you got to make sure that and when you go to wars, and I come from army background, you take care of every single person who is on the front line, right?
Right.
So I worry about people as the number one factor. That are people doing well? Did I do everything to help my team? Did I do? Then the second thing I worry about: hey, was there any customer escalation issue challenge today?
Right.
Which I addressed or I did not address, and I start to plan my next day around it.
Right.
So every day I worry about my team, I worry about my customers, and then based on the context. For example, if I'm hitting the end of quarter, right, or
Right.
we have, let's say, monthly reviews. So if I'm hitting like the end of month, I will start to worry about the business metrics,
Right.
revenue, adoption, NPS, profit margins, and all of that, what I have to focus for the review, right? But on a daily basis, I don't want to be worrying about business like revenue number on a daily basis, right? We're an enterprise company.
Right.
A lot of business happens towards end of the quarter. It's like late loaded business. So
Right.
I can't worry about it in the first half of the quarter. It wouldn't be right use of my energy and time. But I really worry about my team, my organization, which is engineering, sales, PMM, PM, like the connected organization, which
Right.
which I'm responsible for in a way to lead them and lead the product, and then worry
Right.
about customers, and then contextually you worry about the other measures.
Got it. The other thing that we both agreed that we should discuss is on critical skills and functions of a product manager must develop. I know we
Mhm.
covered a bit, but maybe just to complete the entire question, do you still? What are the other critical skills and functions? Say for a young product manager to be growing his career into, what would they be?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. No, that's a great question, and I love to talk about it because it's very, very important for, especially for the, you rightly said, young product managers, right, who are beginning their journey, right. I tell them, hey, product management is not like it's not like the CEO position, right? You have to work through the hierarchy, the ranks, and you have to do a lot of hard work to get where you can make strong decisions. So one of the skills I always focus on for every single product manager. I mean, a product manager by definition has to be a leader. So every skill which is applicable to a leader is applicable to a product manager, right? And why I say so is because the product manager, I'll take a few examples, okay? Like, you must have courage
Mm.
to differentiate what you want to do versus what you not don't want to do. You must have courage to say no to somebody asking you to do something, right? Because if that's not aligning with the vision or the roadmap or your strategy, right? You must have courage to stand up and defend your product, right? And defend the team, like,
Right.
which is the broader product team. So courage, for example, plays a huge role. Trust. A product manager must have trust established with the ecosystem, which
Mm.
is product, engineering, sales, support, marketing, like all of these factors involved, right? I mean, the support engineers should know who's the product manager for this product to call if he confronts a really unhappy customer and he wants to pass on the feedback. So trust is super important. Have
How do,
empathy.
but how do you build trust?
Very nice. Trust is not easy to build, right? I always repeat a sentence which I love: no title and no position can give you trust with the team.
Mhm.
You can only develop trust by working with the team with three attributes. Number one, discipline. Number two, integrity, right? So you have to be disciplined about what you do. You have to have integrity, because people should like blind close their eyes and say, hey, you know what, if Ravi is taking this decision, it is right decision.
Mhm. But how does
And
how can that trust come with my decision? I'm,
it
I'm
takes
talking.
time.
Yeah,
It
okay.
takes
I'm talking
time.
about somebody who's new in the organization. Okay. So of course it will take time. So what does he need to do? Like, does he have to have first early wins in the first formative months to get that trust that when Ravi takes that decision, it is the right decision?
Actually, it's again a very interesting question you asked, right? And I'll answer it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
You can earn trust by demonstrating success of the product,
Hmm.
but it will be a longer cycle.
Yes.
Trust is in between people.
Mm.
You can gain trust faster by having respect, empathy for the broader team, by ensuring that you're listening to them, they are taking their feedback, you're not making decisions as a product manager in isolation and forcing them to act on that. So trust is a people thing, right? Many times we relate it to success of the product or stuff. I mean, I can earn $10 billion more. Will it give me trust with my team? Yeah, I
Mm.
bet you won't improve your trust metric with the team by earning more money, right?
Right.
Trust is a people thing. So you take care of people and you work with people with the right attitude, the right focus, the right empathy, and trust develops. It takes time. There is no magic bullet for trust, right? But it's
Got
very important. See, because as a PM, many times you have to make decision on the fly. Many
it. Mm.
times you have to decide while you don't have time to go and take feedback from everyone involved,
Got it.
right? And people should say, okay, well, you know what? I trust Ravi that if he had time, he would have come and asked me.
Right.
And while he had to make the decision, he made the decision, and it is the right decision, and I'm going to follow through, or I'm going to talk to Ravi and figure out what was his thought process,
Right.
right? So trust is super important there. And then
Right.
there are so many other things, so many other leadership qualities like fairness, right? I believe that a PM has to be super fair, right? When I say fairness, what happens is like over years, a PM sometimes develop love for the product or love for a certain feature, no, you got to be 100% fair, right?
Right.
When developing product prioritization, you have to be 100% fair. You have to be like self-aware, like about your likes, your dislikes, your prioritization decision making. Because if you're not self-aware, you might make decisions which are not thought through well. So a
Right.
lot of these, and then the most important thing is influence, right? Every product manager has to work with influence.
Right.
Thus, when you start your journey, you don't have a team,
Right.
you have nobody reporting to you, and you're
Right.
still supposed to get like 5 different teams pulled together in a single room and make right decisions on the product to be successful. It needs a lot and lot of influencing skills. So I would say those are some of the critical leadership skills a product manager has to develop.
Right.
Then second thing also I want to just quickly touch upon. I know we may run out of time a little bit. That apart from leadership skills, the second bucket I call is like core competency skills,
Hmm.
right? In core competency, number one is focus. You
Hmm.
have to, as a product manager, you have to help reduce noise. You have to focus on what really matters. You
Mm.
have to reduce and narrow the problem statement, right?
Mm.
Those are the things as part of your core competency you need to do. You need to be a good storyteller, by the way,
Right.
right? What I mean, the convincing and influencing is all done by good storytelling. you
Right.
you must be consistent in what you are doing.
Right.
You better be a listener, right? You need to listen a lot of feedback from all of the involved teams, customers, partners, feedback coming from market. You have to internalize a lot of feedback. So you got to be a good listener.
Right.
And then, you got to develop a lot of other skills apart from like things like this. You got to be many times you just have to play a good team player, right?
Right.
People want to work with PMs who are good team players, who are working as a team rather than only focus on taking decisions. And the last one, which is my favorite, PM is a path where you have to be on the journey of continuous learning, right? You have to learn every single day.
Right. I
So these are
mean,
some of the core competencies.
yeah. So actually, in short, PM has to be a Superman, right? Because there is so much being asked, and that's why it's such a demanding role, isn't it? It's not a role where everybody can succeed, because it needs a lot of skills that you just laid out, and each of them are as important as the other one, isn't it? I just want you to elaborate on the discipline. You said the discipline. What does discipline mean here?
Well, discipline for a PM is not about, I mean, discipline, like if you're disciplined, you're disciplined, right? Discipline starts with your daily rituals, but discipline for a PM is about making the right decisions, is about being disciplined in your approach to solve a problem. Your discipline, for example, many times you'll hear, hey, somebody from the broader team coming up and saying that, okay, well, you didn't ask me, you didn't include me in that meeting, right? You have to be disciplined about who is your core team, right? You have to be disciplined about your approach of problem solving. For example, a PM coming late to the meeting is not a good start to the meeting. If you want to be in the driving seat, you must be on or before time. There is no concept of coming late. There is no concept of giving excuses. Unless if you're not disciplined, believe me, 8 out of 10 times you'll be giving excuses for, oh, I forgot, oh, I could have done this better, oh, I thought it this way. No, you got to be 100% disciplined in your approach. It is super important for you to succeed as a PM.
Got it. We have an audience question here, and this comes from Adrita, and she says, how important is it for a PM to have an engineering background to be able to play the consultant's role in defining the how? So the ones that you explained, and you said that most of them come from engineering and coding and development background, but it's not the case actually. There are also a lot of non-technical people. So how can we resolve this?
Yeah, Aditya, thank you for asking, and this is a very, very good question, right? Because Ravi, as you said, like not everybody can come from the engineering or coding background, and it is not a disadvantage not to come from engineering and coding background. You just have to make sure you hire the best engineers and architects. You just have the right team, right people on the team to ensure, and that's anyways the case, right? Because as I said, PM should not PM should stay a step away from defining how, right? Because there is a team. Like if you are one PM, you've got like 10 people on the engineering and the UX and this broader team whose core is to define the how. So number one, you are not at a disadvantage if you don't know the core domain or the engineering skills. You can still play, Aditya, you can still play the consultant's role by asking the right question. Even in the how journey, you should just ask the right why questions, right, to the broader team. And you don't really need technology skill for it. You just need product skills, and you develop that over a period of time. So I have seen a lot, and I have hired a lot of product managers who don't come from the core domain skills, and they have been super successful, right? It's a learning, it's a journey.
Got it. Thank you so much. The other question that I have actually two questions. One is about managing it upwards for a VP. So I suppose you are reporting to the CEO. So what are your ways to influence your managing upwards, managing laterally to your peers, and managing downwards? So maybe if you could spend a few minutes there, that'd be great to know.
Yeah, I mean, see, it's a tricky question for me because in my experience and how I do things, you definitely need to manage things and manage people, but I completely believe in leading people and inspiring people, and so when I work with my team, I tell them that, hey, you don't work for me, I work for you. You tell me what you have got as a problem, and it's my job to figure out how do I solve it. Other than that, I know you're doing all the right things for the business, for the objectives and OKRs and results to be driven. So leading people helps with as I said, as we discussed in the beginning, gaining trust, and effectively, it also helps with effectively managing them along with their aspirations and their goals for their own careers, right? And when it is about managing upwards, it is the way I have learned it and I do is like, to have a very, very honest and open conversation with my leadership team
Right.
and be very objective driven and, result oriented so that you can have very objective conversation. And, I would say I've been personally lucky to work with great leaders in my career who have actually taught me a lot and who have also in this whole leadership style, what happens is you give freedom to your team, right? You're not micromanaging, you're not worrying about day in, day out, right? I mean, what you're worrying about, are your people happy or not, right? And rest, they are doing their job to take care of things. So that's my way to look at how do you work with people and also work with upstream great leaders to learn and to adopt to some of their standards and go together. It's a game of playing together.
Got it. And what about laterally to your peers, say VP of sales and VP of marketing? How do you influence them, and what is your how do you influence them?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a even more important one, right? I mean, because in the leadership role, as I said, right, these are like, let's say 10 VPs sitting on the alignment process, right? Everybody has to work with everybody else.
Right.
So, again, if I just uh, iterate, right, my way is to be very honest and fair in terms of what I'm trying to do, why I'm trying to do it, why is what I'm doing, like what kind of problem I'm solving. Ask for feedback, right? I very often it helps to ask for feedback from the peers, and and in order for when you ask for feedback, you end up providing feedback also. At any point, like one of the other things I've learned through my career is that everybody in that role in the organization is trying to do the right thing, right? So you have to be respectful. You have to
Got
be
it.
respectful at every level, like not just
Got
at the VP level. You got to be
Right.
respectful. You got to be empathetic to people, right? Know their problems. Sometimes you kind of assume that, hey, somebody is not listening or not looking at your problem, but you don't know that they possibly have a much bigger problem on
Right.
their hand, which requires their attention, right? And
Right.
then help people solve pressing issues, provide guidance. I mean, these are usual way you work with the peer team and have a good rapport with the team to work ahead.
So I know it sounds easy, but I know you have mastered it. That's why you have grown through the ranks. But what are the ways to handle disagreements? Say a VP of sales thinks differently for your decision. How do you resolve it when he thinks differently, but you think differently? How do you come to a solution?
Yeah, it's all part of the framework, right? So when you define the why, for example, right? When you define the why, you see, end of the day in business, we all exist to solve customer problems,
Right.
right? The usual disagreement is on the way of, are you going to solve your way or my way, right? I mean,
Right.
usually that's where some of the disagreements come. So
Right.
number one, if ever a disagreement kind of arises, my
Right.
my first thing is to go back to the why,
Right.
and I'll take the why back to the sales, for example, or anybody in the organization. Say, hey, first, do you agree to the why? Do you agree that we are trying to solve the right problem, a right use case, a right pressing need for the customer?
Right.
Once we agree on the why, the rest of what and how we can work it out, like
Got it.
the disagreements there are like things you can discuss, you can align, and you can solve, and as far as it does not impact your core OKRs, core
Right.
business metrics, you don't want to
Right.
worry about it. Like, many times I actually, so the other way I have learned to do it well is to, before somebody disagrees, you ask for feedback, right? Before you get into the alignment process, you talk to them, ask for feedback, share with them what you're trying to do, what's your thought process, why are you doing it,
Right.
and that helps with aligning with the broader leadership team in the organization.
Got it. So I'm just being mindful of time here, but we have a couple of questions from Devi Santosh. I think you know him and I know him, and he had sent me a couple of questions. Let me just pick one of them, and then we can see. So it seems like when you were still in the formative years in Citrix was not a pure play product driven company, and you have seen through that transformation. Um, so his question was: most of the legacy organizations are sales and engineering driven. I assume the same was for Citrix. How did Citrix transform into a product driven company, and what was your role in it? And as a PM leader, what did you do to transform the culture within your team? So did was there a transformation at all in Citrix towards being more product driven organization?
So well, Citrix, by the virtue of what we produce, I mean, we are a completely product-based company. So, Citrix definitely had product managers, as far as I remember, like 25 years ago. So, yes, in a way, we transformed to be very product focused, right? I mean, the product manager, like the decision making focus, right? And I'll give you common example, which is easy for everyone to relate. So, like 20 years back, what kind of problem IT was solving? IT was solving, in a way, very user-centric problems.
Right.
Okay, so you have a problem, like you take any example and you'll see it's a very focused user-centric problem. So the why always came from the end users or the customer, right? And you just adopted that why, you solved that problem, and you went ahead with it.
Right.
Where product managers really play a transformative role is when when IT was not about solving the common, easy, simple problems, right? When it was more about innovation, when
Right.
it was more about, more about, like, for example, right? There was always a search engine. Much
Right.
before Google came into existence, there was always a search engine,
Right.
right? Why did Google did what they did is because they thought in a very transformative way, in a way where where you focus on the 10x growth model
Right.
with objective driven approach, right? So product managers help with that kind of a model, and companies who want to be transformative, because you need somebody to think broad and think deep about where you want to go, how we want to go, and what is your end result, right?
Right.
So so in that way, apart from these, some of these companies which were born in the cloud, which
Right.
started with product managers as a core, every other company has transformed over the years
Right.
to be product or product manager centric in terms of the whole operational model of the company of developing the product.
Right. Got it. I just would end this with one more question here, and this was I had not planned this before, but usually I ask this to VPs on how they are. You talked about discipline, building discipline as a core virtue, but what are some of your personal effectiveness uh, practices or habits to manage your work? Like, what are your, like? Do you like spend your end of the days on Sundays to plan your week ahead? Do you have a dashboard where you see all the different projects to see? Okay, some CEOs have these balanced scorecard and stuff like that. So what are some of your ways to stay on top of your job? What are your daily practices and disciplines? That would be a great
Yeah,
discussion to end the
yeah,
conversation.
sure. It's a great question, Ravi. Um, I would say that number one, like, discipline, right? I am very disciplined about. See, I'm responsible for a product which is a global product. Like in common roles, product managers nowadays are responsible for global product. When you're
Right.
responsible for global product, you need to be very predictable, very specific, very disciplined. So I start my day, for example, very early, right? Because I want to know before the customers and my team in US, kind of goes towards end of the day. I want to make sure that I catch up to everything which happened during the day in the US, and if there's anything which I need to take care of while I work through my hours and my day. And a lot of my strategy meetings are early morning meetings, because my team in the US is available, and so I start my day early, focus on core problems, focus on core business results in all of these strategy conversation. And I do worry about, as you said, that dashboard, that business result thing. So we have, like, a business analytics dashboard, which where I spend every day a couple minutes.
Correct.
to see the trend line, to see how we are doing. And but I wouldn't spend a lot of time there, right? I mean, I'll spend time to make sure that we are making progress, and we are making progress. And if I figure out any bottleneck, I will highlight that bottleneck to the team or to the ecosystem players. Could be engineering, could be sales, could be somebody else. Figure out customer pressing problem, and then figure out and work on, like, usually in a day I want to spend couple of hours working with my product team every single day, like, whether I'm reviewing a PRD or I'm reviewing a business plan or I'm helping create the why. It could be any of these product centric exercises, but I want to spend every single day, I want to spend some time on product centric exercise, a little bit time on reviewing my business dashboard, doing my strategy meetings, and obviously focused on anything which was like an escalation, or which was a problem which needs my attention to solve. And not like, we are a US centric organization with great facilities all around the globe, so
Right.
but a lot of business happen in the US. So for me, it's super important to be on top of the business and customer concerns. So these
Right.
are things I would do on a common basis. And then I block some time, not on a daily basis but on a weekly basis, to to help mentor people, like, to help, to work with people, right? I mean, there are a lot of people, lot of people in our organizations who want to be a PM, who aspire to be a PM, right? And when they reach out to me, I always tell them, hey, look, you know what, I'm going to spend time with you, so we'll set up some time. And that's how I started my conversation with Debbie as well, right? You spend time. So I always make sure in a week I have a few hours where I can spend those hours with people and people-centric desires, wishes, problems, where I can help as a leader.
Got it. And how do you manage your to-do list? I'm sure you are inundated with a lot of emails. So how do you ensure what is important, what is not? Does it all go to to-do list, or I'm asking this because it's important as well, because managing your to-do list, otherwise it can go out of hand, isn't it? So how do you do that?
Yeah, yeah. So like, so my to-do list, like, it may sound that it's a lot, but it's very simple, right? So every day before I close, and I say, okay, done, all meetings done, all reviews done, and I will close with very simple, and I make sure it's not more than 2 or 3 points. Things I could not complete today, which are important for me to pay attention to tomorrow, like in the next day. So I
Okay.
just simply write those down. And as I said, when I wake up in the morning and I look through all the emails and all the, like, go through all the strategy meetings, and then I reconcile my list and say, okay, well, today, can I pick up, like, and I usually don't pick up more than two, at the most three things to do in a day, right?
Three important
So
things. Three
three
important.
important things.
Okay.
That's it, right? And rest, there can be 10 other things you can do, right? Like getting to on a customer call, talking to sales, being in the alignment process.
Right.
But I don't believe in doing more than three focused activities in a day. That's enough to drain you out, right? And the three focused activities could be making a big decision, like, let's say, a strategy decision, or a roadmap decision. It could be reviewing a really important PRD or a business alignment process. Like, it could be solving a pressing customer case where a customer has been really unhappy. I really care for that. So I will pick up 2 to 3 things I want to focus on to solve in a day. And sometimes they come from the list I had on the previous day, and sometimes they are part of the morning list which I get
Right.
onto when I start my day. It's a roundabout clock, right? It's a 24/7. So you stop with a list, and then you wake up to another list, you reconcile and say, hey, what are the 2 things or 3 things you want
Right.
to focus your energy on in the day?
And suppose it's an important decision that you need to take. It might need a lot of thinking time. So do you like block time on your calendar just to work on that problem and then come to a.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all such, see, it's rare that we do very ad hoc things, right? We do very planned things. So I know what are the critical decisions or deep thinking I need to do next week. And I will carve out time on my calendar to do that, to spend that time in doing this deep thinking, and doing some deep reviews and making some of these difficult decisions. By the way, some of these decisions I never make in a single day. You review, make the decision, and the old saying, you sleep with the decision.
Right.
Next day morning when you wake up, you start to think that, hey, was it the right decision? Maybe not, right? So
Right.
you all critical decisions, I usually never want to make it in a single day. I want to sleep over the decision and the problem statement for a couple days, 2 to 3 days, before I get to a conclusion.
Thank you, Abhishek. Well, Abhilash, sorry. Thank you for your time, Abhilash. And it was a great conversation, and I got to learn a lot of things. It just got meatier in parts. And usually I ask about the personal effectiveness, because when I see somebody has grown through their careers, it's more than strategy. It's about the daily disciplines, about the little things. And thanks for sharing those little things. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening, who listen to you today, they will go back with a lot of insights and wisdom. So thanks again, Abhilash.
You're most welcome, Ravi. I hope this was a useful discussion for your users. Thank you, people, for listening.
Thanks, Abhilash, again. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.